Over the past 5 years, we have seen an alarming spike when it comes to hate crimes against, among other groups, Jewish people, the LGBTQ community, and others. But since the pandemic started, more and more Asian Americans, they're getting attacked due to their heritage. And experts say the anti-China rhetoric of Donald Trump during COVID, both from he and his supporters, it has helped to fuel that violence. I'm going to show you now a few examples, and I warn you, they're quite disturbing. In New York City, police, they're searching for the man who knocked down an Asian woman outside a bakery in Queens. In San Francisco, an 85-year-old Asian American man going for his morning walk was attacked senselessly by a 19-year-old man and killed. The victim's daughter describing what happened to her father.
He got injury very bad about his brain bleeding, and he never wake up again. I never see him again.
In Oakland's Chinatown, a 91-year-old man thrown to the ground, that one also being investigated as a possible hate crime. And in California, the Chinese-American man verbally abused by a Trump supporter.
Trump's gonna you. You need to leave. Asian piece of
Oh my God.
Sadly, I could go on and on. My next guest here to discuss all of that, plus the ongoing investigations into the Capitol Hill riot, Congressman Andy Kim. He a Democrat from New Jersey. He's also served at the Pentagon, the State Department, and the White House National Security Council. You know, we showed our audience a compilation about a real problem. I think it's gone underreported, frankly, and that has been the spike in hate crimes, particularly targeted towards Asian Americans. There's a lot of reasons. I know this isn't brand new, but it is perceptible, just the spike that we have seen since COVID came on. How much of that do you put at the foot of the former president popularizing terms like Kung Flu, the China virus, etc.? Because sometimes, even in these images that are captured, you see almost those words being spit out before they attack, a lot of times, elderly Asian people.
Well, first of all, thank you for covering this issue. This violence is so destructive, and seeing these images of elderly Asian Americans getting assaulted, that could be my parents, my grandparents. It's very worrisome. Yes, I get asked this question pretty often about whether or not this was at the feet of the former president. Look, it certainly contributed to it. You know, his actions, his words certainly contributed to the xenophobia, the discrimination, racism, but I'm not going to say that that was the end of the story. I have felt, and many have felt, this type of discrimination for as long as I can remember. Ever since I was a child, I see my own child now, my 5-year-old, start to have these types of experiences in his life. So that's something I'm certainly fighting hard in Congress for. Whether it comes to Asian Americans or other communities of color, we need to make sure we're pushing hard to be able to have that security.
And I think, and you've said it, putting a voice to this instead of just keeping this as quiet as going on for far too long, an overdue first step. Congressman, I mentioned before your national security bona fides. This 9/11 commission type that's going to be set up to take a look at what happened, both led up to and what happened during, and the various players involved in those January 6th riots. Give an idea of, if it's done the right way, some of the things that we're going to learn and just how transparent this ought to be.
Well, I'm still learning details about what might be proposed. So this is still in development, but I think the American people deserve to know more about some of these violent extremist groups that attacked the Capitol or plotted to attack the Capitol. I remember getting a briefing after January 6th about some of the threats coming forward towards Inauguration Day. And that briefing was very alarming. It was something more akin to the kind of briefing I would hear when I was based out of Kabul, Afghanistan. Very organized groups. The names of these groups, not names that I was familiar with, not a lot of people were familiar with, but they are organized, they are mobilizing, they are communicating. That is something that we need to bring out more to the American people, because I think it gets clustered under just this haze of extremism or QAnon. It is much more specific than that. These groups are very, very dangerous. And it's not just about the accountability, it's about where we go from here. How do we secure our democracy? How do we make sure that the American people are safe? And that's something that they deserve to have answers to.
You know, I have one of many, but one of which is, and you spoke about the briefings. Well, How is it possible that prior to the 6th, even in the weekend leading up to it, you had the FBI offices based out of Virginia and others warning about what was coming for the 6th? How is it possible, given that the president and his handlers chose the date, chose the location, that they weren't alarmed about the growing threat that was convening on D.C., and they still went along with the rhetoric that came from that stage? I mean, those are some of the things I know for myself. I'd love to get to the answer of it. One of the things that has always stuck with me is the photograph I saw of you in the aftermath of the riots, cleaning up in the Capitol. And you didn't do it, to be caught on camera. You did it, as I understand, Congressman, because you were so moved and so upset by the desecration of the Capitol that day. And I ask that in context of now when you go back to Washington, you're going to look across the aisle and you're going to wonder, is it possible some of your colleagues actually aided and abetted some of those rioters or basically helped them case the Capitol ahead of time? The Marjorie Taylor Greens of the world, who proudly identified with QAnon before these riots. What do you see in certain corners when you look across the aisle and you wonder if the enemy wasn't just storming the Capitol that day, but maybe still in the Capitol?
I agree. It's tough when I look at some of my colleagues and try to understand what did they see on that day. And when we gathered back in the House chamber after the insurrection, many of them gave the same speech condemning the Electoral College vote that they would have given had that insurrection not happened. It was as if there was just this blank in time for them, rather than fully understanding what had actually occurred. We're going to have a long road to recovery ahead. And, I hope, though, that we can make sure that we do it in a way that really tries to push us closer together rather than not. I know that sounds naive sometimes, but it's necessary. We just cannot continue on this trajectory of division that we're currently on. Congressman
Kim, I appreciate the time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And up next, we go inside the Beltway and get the very latest from Capitol Hill from our good friend, ABC News political director, Rick Klein.